The federal government is looking to ban tanker traffic along a portion of the BC coast. Bill C-48 would ban tankers capable of carrying more than 12,500 metric tons of oil from the northern tip of Vancouver Island to the Alaska border. The legislation formalizes a similar voluntary ban that has been in place in the region for the last 20 years. Danielle Smith from 770 CHQR joining us this morning to break this down a little further for us. Danielle, just formalizing something that's been in place. Help us understand a bit of the numbers in this whole conversation.
It's just straight up politics. Justin Trudeau campaigned in the last election on banning tanker traffic off the coast for Alberta oil only. Because it must be confusing for people thinking, well, isn't there already a port in Kitimat? And aren't they already talking about having a massive $40 billion pipeline project for LNG going there? How can you have both? How can you have a tanker ban at the same time as have this major project? And it's just targeted at Alberta, which is what makes it outrageous number one. The thing that makes it outrageous number two is Calvin Helin has been heading up the Eagle Spirit project, trying to get approval of First Nations along a route that would allow us to build not just one oil pipeline, but two oil pipelines and make it wide enough as well for natural gas pipelines. And he's getting stymied. So you've got a First Nations community lined up with a bunch of other chiefs who want to see these projects develop. And you've got Ottawa, who stepped in the way with this tanker ban bill that's wending its way through the Senate. So what they have been trying to do is saying, first of all, don't pass it. Number two, if it does pass, they have launched a legal challenge to raise money to be able to fight it. But number three, and this is what I'll be talking with Calvin Helin about today, is they want to go to the United Nations and say that that Canada has violated their Indigenous rights by not consulting them before putting this ban in place, kind of turning the tables on the normal narrative that we hear out of First Nations communities. So we're going to talk to him to see whether or not he's likely to be successful in that effort.
There's a lot of politicking going on. As sort of the side conversation, as we just mentioned with our premier, really ramping up the NDP's own rhetoric here at home. How much of that is believable as we do approach our provincial election?
Well, she's been very credible on this. Whatever her activism against pipelines to try to win that protest group over in the lead up to the election, I don't think we can fault her for the fact that she's completely changed her position since she got elected. She's one of our best voices on advocacy. And I think she's so strong because she comes from an unusual place. You expect a conservative to argue in favor of pipelines. It's been really unusual to see her be such a forceful advocate. But she gave a speech at the Canadian Club a couple of weeks ago, and she pointed out this tanker ban issue as well. She said we cannot have a double standard in how we establish our laws. So she's fighting against C-69, which is the bill that would make it virtually impossible to build any new pipeline projects. She's been advocating against this tanker ban and, of course, advocating in favor as well of making sure that Trans Mountain gets built. So I think that, I mean, it was sort of fun to see the little trolling that she did yesterday of the Liberal Christmas party, having a bit of fun, but at the same time on a very serious issue. I don't think that there's any way that Justin Trudeau can avoid thinking about this with her doing those kinds of things.
So you do see her past relationships and friendships and that network is perhaps more beneficial if she were to continue in her capacity as a premier?
Well, I think that unfortunately there was a lot of high hopes that because she decided to put in place her climate leadership plan, I think we assumed that she would be able to bring aboard all of that protest and advocacy community against our pipelines. The fact of the matter is she hasn't been able to. She tried to co-opt people like Sephora Berman and Karen Mann and Tim Gray and others, and by bringing them onto the Oil Sands Advisory Committee. And yet they are just as ferocious in their advocacy to kill pipelines in the first place. So one of the things that she had to do, she had to make a decision. Is she going to stand up for Albertans and workers, or is she going to continue to align with that extreme element of the environmental community? And I think she's separated herself from them. I don't know if she'll have consequences in the next election for that. It seems like it creates an opportunity for the Green Party to step into the breach, but it could well be that in Alberta, we've just come to the conclusion, no matter what political party you run for, you have to be pro-development, pro-energy, and pro-pipeline. That may be the biggest shift that we've seen in this province since Rachel Notley became premier.
So many things, but we'll talk about that coastline on your show, 9:30 to 12:30. Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan.